Our first game review for 2025. This one is Dungeons and Dragons Online. Now, DDO, as it's commonly called, is not your basic tabletop format. It's more of an MMO format. It originally came out in 2006. I believe it was Trion that originally released it. Now it's Standing Stone that has it. And this is a massive game, much like World of Warcraft. The dilemma is, unlike World of Warcraft, which has its own problems, this one has a very unique problem in the fact of they never updated the coding since then. Now the game itself is set up and will run fine on Windows 10 and Windows 11. However, because over the years they have simply stacked newer code over the older code and not went back and cleaned everything up, it has a couple of major issues. Most of this will affect large group play, but I have had it happen a couple of times on small party and even single player play, which is in World of Warcraft and so on, we used to have what was called rubber banding. You'd be running forward and then suddenly you're 3 steps back. Or you would be fighting a boss and you would jump from one tile to another when the sequence is supposed to, turn the tile into fire or whatever. And suddenly halfway through the jump, bonk, you're right back on top of the spot and now you're fried. This one does not really rubber band. It simply freezes up. And most of this is due to the latency issues involved. So, with that being said, that is, in my opinion, the major issue that a lot of the younger generations will have trouble playing this game because they're not used to it. All of these servers still run a 32-bit system except Cormier, which is a new one that they're trying at 64, and just like New World, as soon as it was released, it crashed within an hour. I still, even if I'm using an IPv6 and route directly to New York, because their server is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and my VPN will allow me to route to New York and Washington, D.C., which is as close as I can get to it. Even then, their 64-bit server has almost twice as much latency as the 32-bit if I did it the same way. It's just, they need to invest either in a team to go in and revamp the code so everything's unified and not a bunch of soup salad in there, or get an AI that can go through and at least troubleshoot the major issues. But undoubtedly, they do not want to put the money out to do that. Because like all these other games, their basic comment is, we're aware of the situation and working on it. They've been aware of the situation and working on it for over almost 20 bloody years. Okay? So, that is the major issue with this game. The other issue, as far as the negative aspects, is one, if I want to go in And I can have characters on all these various servers. But if I want to go in and change to a different server, I've got to totally log out of the entire game and then log back in just to get to my server selection. For years, from what I was reading up and so on, for years people have been going, just give us a change server button. And they won't do it. Again, it's because their setup is so old. The game is still active. It's got players. Okay, there's plenty of information out there on YouTube and so on for new players. But in today's generation, in the give it to me now, I ordered it, why is it not at my doorstep 10 minutes later era, excuse me, any type of latency where we're used to typically 62 frames per second, or 60 frames per second, sorry. It's just, for some people, this is going to be a game killer. All right? Just plain and simple. I must say that they have, over the years, upped their graphics quite a bit. Okay. They've tried to make changes, but it's always some kind of a cosmetic, slap some plaster on a wall and nobody will notice the cracks. And then, of course, once the plaster dries, the crack comes back through. So, if you're able to deal with that, overall, the game is a 90% still effective and good, fun game to play. So let's get down to the nuts and bolts and nitty-gritty of this. First, we're going to look at tweaks in order to fix the majority of this latency issues. First of all, you can use what VPN that you want, but your VPN should be able to allow you to select specific states and so on. I noticed a lot of these VPNs today is simply you're in the United States and they just mimic or spoof an IP address. Okay? You need something to where I can say I want to connect into a server in United States, Houston, or I want to connect to a server, say, in Glasgow, United Kingdom. Okay? This allows me to specifically get myself to, or as close as possible, to the server that I'm trying to connect to. And it will make a difference. All right? So let's have a look at that. Thelanis is one of the older servers. I started playing on this server back in, it's 2006 when it first came out. I'm an old Dungeons & Dragons player. I'm talking Blue Book, polyhexadine, uncolored, the little red, the little red dice, the soft Blue Book edition, that kind of thing. I was playing Dungeons & Dragons back then. This one holds fairly true to the 3.0 rule set. So for me, that is one advantage. You don't have all this hodgepodge, Oriental adventures, and all this other stuff going up. You've got monks and so on, but it's, some people go, I play to have fun. fun. I want to have fun. I want a rainbow Skittles popping out my rear as my fairy fire when I'm trying to take it. No, for me, when I'm playing a game, fun is when I am beating the game. Fun is when I can max out. I guess nowadays they call them meta players. I look at all the aspects of the game and try to beat the game. Because of my nerve damage and so on, I will never be a good PvP player ever again. I don't have the reaction time. I don't have the hand dexterity anymore. Dang it. I should not have eaten before I started this. So, one of the good things about this game is there's no ganking. Everything is instanced except the wilderness areas, and even they are instanced if you go in alone or in a group. The cities are typically open server areas. That's where you'll see most of the other players. And they do allow a PvP. They've got little sections for arenas where you can queue to do combat. They've got you can request duels from players. In my UI settings, I have that turned off so that it just automatically denies. It's not my thing, okay? But for those who like doing that kind of stuff, that option is there. They do I think it's once a year they do what they call a hardcore series run, where the basic concept is you want to create a character, level 1, and run through it. But if that character dies at any point, it's a permanent death. And it's basically you're competing in teams or individually to see if you can max your character out, or how high you can get it without dying. I mean, it's a good little offshoot, but lots of people die. So that's your basic killer DM type motif. So let's take a look here. We're going to go into my regular server. Note, I am in Germany. I do know that one of our guys that plays out of Washington State actually gets a higher latency than I do. So some of it is your internet provider. Some of it is location, because he does not have a VPN. His VPN is basically, it spoofs his IP. That's about it. And so we could not do a test where I could get him to connect up to a VPN and we could actually move it to the same location as I run to see if that will fix the latency. I honestly believe it will. I honestly do. So, especially if you're not in the continental United States and you're playing outside the United States, then you really want to look at a VPN. Speaking of which, and I know we're going to get into it, I promise. Speaking of which, if you go through Steam, you can get the game, you can download the game for free on Steam. However, Steam has issues, and they keep telling me, oh, it's the game's issue. No, if I try to log into this game through Steam, I get to my login screen and it freezes up indefinitely. Okay? I have Steam set in my exclusions, everything else. but the game simply does not like to run, for whatever reason, in Steam. This has been a recent thing since last in 2024. I've seen a lot of complaints about it. We will cover a workaround on that. Also, if you're in a different country, like myself, I am an American. I have an American bank. I have an American Visa. I have all my American stuff. And if I try to log in through Steam and make my payments to that, it wants to transfer it to Euro. I get charged additional money and everything else. And because they do have a micro store, okay? In some ways, it is a pay-to-win scenario, which is not allowed in the hardcore mode. You can't use all the stuff that you could get, but they do have some fairly decent cosmetic stuff. So let's have a look at this. So our first thing is, of course, getting the game to run. And like I said, you can either download it via Steam or directly through the DDO. If you do it directly through the DDO, it will create a desktop icon and you have no problems. If you do it through Steam and it's continuously locking up on you, what you would need to do, you would have to go to your Steam account, your Steam folder, and we want to, I think that's, in mine it's Steam Games. Once you're in your Steam folder, you go to Steam Apps, Common, and you would find Dungeons and Dragons Online. Okay, I don't have it in here because I'm running it off the other one. But once you find that folder, what you want is the D&D Launcher EXE. You can then, again, depending upon Windows 10, Windows 11, whatever, you can create a desktop shortcut and then run it directly that way. This typically will bypass the thing freezing up, and if you turn Steam off before you do this and you create this and just activate it without activating Steam, normally Steam will not activate and run in the background, freeing up a little bit more space for you. But that's where you want to go into your Steam apps, Common, find the DDO game, and then find that D&D Launcher EXE and run it from that. All right. I believe it's something to do with the changes that they make to the D&D client on Steam to make you run it in Steam. And I'm not sure what's going on. They'll give me no answer. They simply keep telling me, "Oh, it's the game's fault. Contact the game company." And I can run it directly with no problems at all. I have some guys that have it in Steam that they were having some of them have it in Steam and do not have the problem. Others do. And if they directly create a desktop shortcut and access it without starting Steam, the problem goes away. I do not know what it is, and nobody can tell me why. So that's on that. Let's move on to part number 2.